Hey, this is Chris Higdon from band Elliott in Louisville, Kentucky, and you're listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we're back with another brand new episode, and we've got a great one this week, jam-packed with good stuff. We have Chris Broach of Braid, and I loved this conversation, and I know you're going to as well. Braid, we know and love. Frame and Canvas, we know and love. It's a classic. We cover all things Braid, the Midwest emo scene, and some of the beginnings of that. Chris has also been doing solo music for quite a while now. He just released a new song on a split with Palm Ghosts, and we talk about that too. And we have our artist spotlight interview this week with Scott Signorino, guitar player of Soft No. And I've known Scott for a while. It's great to reconnect with him again on this episode. And Soft No have a very, very strong debut EP, which you need to check out. And that is all coming up shortly. All right, so check this out. I was recently a guest on the As the Story Grows podcast, hosted by Brian Patton. And I talked about my new band, Memory Entry, who just debuted our first single this past weekend. And on the podcast, I also talked a bunch about the new scene and my time in the Darling Fire and some other stuff. So if you're interested, go give it a listen, and please throw Brian a 5-star rating and review. He has a great podcast. Let's show him some support. Oh, and while I'm at it, yes, Apple Podcast reviews. Show me some support too. You have to. Well, you don't have to, but I want you to. We are at 248 Apple Podcast reviews, and I've got to get to 300, and I need you to do it. I can't keep rating the show myself. I've tried. It doesn't work. I need unique 5-star ratings from you, the supporters of the show. And don't forget to support Iodine Recordings. Here is some news from Iodine. Audio Karate, the 20-year anniversary edition of Lady Melody, is up right now for pre-order. It's on limited colored vinyl, and the deluxe edition of this LP has been completely remastered for vinyl by Jason Livermore at the legendary Blasting Room Studios. It also includes all new artwork and a retrospective of Audio Karate by Bill Stevenson of Descendants and All. Love Letter, Everyone Wants Something Beautiful. The second pressing is available right now, so get yours today. Candy Hearts, You Could Be Anyone, is a new collection of B-sides and rarities from the beloved pop-punk band. Don't forget to check out their video for Everything. Also, Best X will be performing at the Mercury Lounge in Brooklyn this week, August 28th. Best X, as you know, is Mariel from Candy Hearts. The Iron Roses have 2 tour dates coming up with the Dead Kennedys in September. And make sure you check out Strange Desires by Her Head's on Fire. That's their new record. I was just listening to it again because I've got Rodrigo, their bass player, coming up on the podcast. And it's really good. It is really, really good. A solid follow-up to the EP. If you like emo, if you like post-hardcore, even if you like hardcore, you're going to like this. Great record. Pick it up, listen to it, support Her Head's on Fire. Don't forget to sign up for the Iodine newsletter. You'll find out about everything first. You'll find out about all the vinyl first. You can sign up at iodinerecordings.com and make sure you follow them on Instagram at Iodine Recordings. And don't forget to support our sponsor for the month of August, Death Wish Inc. And here are some updates from the label. Glare have signed with Death Wish Inc. They just dropped a new single called Morning Haze, which I'm really digging. It's excellent shoegaze, post-punk vibes on this song. They've got a limited edition 7-inch up now for pre-order, and you can catch them live September 5th in San Antonio at Paper Tiger and September 6th in McAllen, Texas at El Scene. State Fault's Children of the Moon. The new LP is out right now, and it's a must listen. I love it. They're on tour with Pianos Become the Teeth this fall. Listen now and buy tickets at statefaults.com. And don't forget the new self-titled LP from Chastity comes out September 13th. You can listen to the new single, Summer, all over again right now. I love it. They're catchy. They're awesome. You remember when I had Brandon on the show? That was one of my favorite records of that year, and I'm looking forward to this one. Chastity is on tour with Fucked Up in September. Listen now and buy tickets at chastitysongs.com. Eye for an Eye just put out Omega Drone / Who. That's both EPs remastered on one beautiful LP reissue by Alex Garcia Rivera at Mystic Valley Studio. Head to Deathwish Inc., pick up some merch, check out their staff picks playlist on Spotify, and make sure you follow the label on Instagram at Deathwish Inc. All right, so check back in with me. In segment 3, we'll do a quick check-in and a wrap-up of the conversation, but right now, we are going to speak to Chris Broach of Braid. Enjoy. All right, we are here now with Chris Broach. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Keith. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you, Chris. You know, you've done a lot. We've got Braid, we've got your solo music. You just put out an excellent split with Palm Ghosts, and we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about a lot more stuff. But Chris, first I want to ask you, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I'm a little exhausted. We were talking before about the end of summer. You know, I'm ready for summer to be over and for the weather to change, and it's actually starting to get a more less hot. So I like that.
Me too.
I'm a sweater weather kind of person, you know, and it's also good for me to get my kids back in school to give me some more time to focus on other things that I want to do.
Right. Where do you live these days?
So I'm just outside Chicago in a town about an hour northwest of Chicago, where it's still a suburb, but almost not, you know. So it's called Crystal Lake, and it's I'm in a smaller town next to Crystal Lake. But in any case, it's about an hour northwest of the city, and I can get into the city if I need to, which is good. But I get a lot of we live like right on a forest, so it's really nice. And it's like I can hear the birds and the insects outside, and it's a pretty chill spot. We got a good spot, and I have a studio here at the house now, and it's nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. How old are your kids? Are they young?
They're young. Yeah, they're going into 5th, 3rd, and 1st grade, so pretty young.
Oh, wow. So you must be really busy all the time.
Yeah, it really, I don't really get a break. I always feel like, oh, I need a break. And it's a break from whatever it is I'm doing too much of, right? So,
Yeah.
Because I just start something else immediately.
Yeah. Like, here's a question for you.
Sure.
All right. So sometimes I always think, oh, I want a day to do nothing. I want a day to do nothing. Mm-hmm. And then if a day comes where I have nothing to do, I start to panic. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Are you like that?
Actually, I'm pretty good with a nothing to do day, but I get, I have super panic disorder. So I can panic, but I get bored really easily. So if I'm bored, that's when I start to just think like, what am I doing with my life? Why did I move out here? You know, I spiral. So I try to keep somewhat busy. I spend a lot of time working on the house or on the yard, actually. When I have nothing to do, there's always something to do on the house or the yard. Always. I just literally went out and this is so fun for anybody who likes music, but I went out and trimmed the bushes outside and with this new hedge trimmer I got. So that was pretty exciting the other day. I cut about half, and it took me probably half a day because they were so overgrown. And then I had to pull everything back. I've got a fire pit I can burn stuff in. That's how far out of the city we are. I can burn stuff in the yard. So that's kind of fun.
Wow.
I can have like a bonfire, you know?
So you said you have super panic disorder. How does that manifest? Do you have like panic attacks?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not fun. It's, I think there are about 26 reasons for it that I won't go into all of them, but, I had some health issues, and they're, some of them are ongoing, but they're not so bad anymore. But I was diagnosed with cancer 4 years ago, and I fought that pretty hard for 2, 3 years, and I'm finally on the other end of it now. I've been 2 years cancer free now, which is exciting. I just got,
That's great.
yeah.
What kind of cancer, if you don't mind my asking?
It was colorectal cancer.
Okay. I'm curious because my dad just survived a very serious bout of that, and thank God he's still here, still kicking, and I'm very happy that you are too.
I have to say, so am I.
Yeah.
So am I. So yeah, there's ongoing stuff like that. But some of my health issues trigger panic, but I've always had panic. And I think it's more related to the fact that I've been, not recently, but in the last 10 years, diagnosed with ADHD. And more recently have I realized how much ADHD has done a lot of damage to my life in a lot of areas, right? And so doesn't allow me to reach my full potential in a lot of places, unless I try really hard. And so I've been medicated or not medicated, and I'm currently not medicated for it. But that has to do with the medication messes with my heart a little bit, so I can't really take it anymore. But anyway, yeah. So I think because I have ADHD and I can't start projects and I can't start tasks, because like I said, I'm kind of good at chilling if I can. I start to get panicky about all the things I have to do. And then I still don't do them because my ADHD sort of kicks in and doesn't allow me to start. And then if I start and I leave stuff unfinished, I have a bunch of half-finished projects. So I work really hard not to do that. That seems to help. The other thing that helps with my panic, though, honestly, and my anxiety, is exercise, and it also really helps with ADHD. I walk every day quite a bit, and then try to get other exercise in when I can. But I go for a long walk every day.
How long?
It's just about a half an hour, and if I do that, it's about a mile and a half. Sometimes I do a little more, but it's about a half hour, and then I'm actually doing longer than that sometimes, but. And then if I do anything else on top of that, it's just a bonus, if I do I have weights and things like that I do.
Yeah. No, because as you're talking, I'm like, man, maybe I have ADHD. And I started working out back in May.
Yeah.
I started running. Did a half mile, then I do a mile. Now I run a mile and then walk another mile with some more running thrown in there. I've got dumbbells that I keep increasing the weight on. It helps.
Well,
it helps.
It does, man. That stuff's important. And I'm not super young anymore, so I kind of have to do it, or else I start to just be just super lethargic and everything. So, and you got to stay in shape, man. I mean, it's important. And with the problems that I've had in the past, few years, it's really helpful to be in shape and healthy. So,
isn't it weird how much maintenance you have to do just to stay normal once you get older? Like when I was 20, I could go on a 2-day bender and show up to work sort of on time and get things done and then go out again the next night. Now I have to get up, work out, shower, clip, floss, brush, mouthwash, body weight exercises just to be okay, we can function today.
It's 100% true, man. Because if you don't do it, then you're tired.
Yeah.
I'm tired. If I don't do the stuff that's tiring to do, like exercise and go out, some of the yard work I do is pretty heavy work, So if I get my walk in and then I do yard work, it's like a double workout, But it's awesome because that actually gives me energy instead of taking it away. Does that make sense? Yeah, I mean, I think anyone who exercises a lot probably knows that. I used to exercise quite a bit, but it used to be really easy, like you say, I could do it or not, but when I did it, I'd go hard, and I was in great shape, but I could also just go out and get ripped and stay out till 5 a.m, go to work at 9 and be hungover, but be fine, and then do the same thing over again. I could never do that. I don't drink either anymore, but that's another story. That's its own thing.
Yeah. I don't either because, I liked it too much and I was going to probably die if I continued the way I was going. Why did you stop?
It, pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
I was too good at it, and meaning just awful. I didn't know. For me, I didn't know who was going to show up. Does that make sense? So, like, I didn't know when I was drinking. I didn't know if I was going to be awesome, funny dude or shitty asshole, angry guy, and
Yeah.
that's how it ended up in the end of it. I wasn't like that for most of it, but I also was pretty out of control for I'd say 15 years at least. From my late teens into my early 30s, just really went hard, and it was like I'd go to a show, or I'd be most of the time playing a show, and then we would have a rule about, like, you can't drink more than a couple drinks before the show, because we had had a few shows where we had done that and it didn't go well. And then after the show, we would just go hard, man, and sleep until 2, 3 the next day, or get in the van at 7 or whatever time we had to. And I'd just sleep in the van until we got to the show, and we just start again. Um, but it wasn't a good, there I had good times, but I don't remember a lot either,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. There's whole years I don't remember.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm kind of glad I'm not kind of glad. I'm absolutely thrilled and lucky that I don't do it anymore. And it was hard. I mean, I quit 3 times, and over about a period of about 12 years, and for a few years at a time. And this last time that I quit was very difficult, very difficult. And I remember I would go to, like, meetings and stuff, and I did the whole thing. I went to, like, a program and, like, a rehab and stuff more than once. And I just remember, like, seeing guys that were my age when I quit the last time being like, "Man, you fucked up your life." Just thinking that. And then I was that guy, like, I remember being in that place again, thinking to myself, I can't believe that I'm doing and saying the things that I was looking at, 10 years ago, going, that guy's fucked up. But, it was still me trying to get sober. And luckily I have been able to maintain that. I haven't had a drink of alcohol since January of 2020. So,
Oh, that's great.
yeah.
Yeah. It took me a long time to stop, years of failed attempts. And then I locked into 12-step stuff, and that's kept me on the right path for a long time now, years and years. So
Yeah.
good for us.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, that's what that stuff is there for. I mean, I don't go to meetings very often, but I will still go to a meeting once in a while. Just to keep my finger on, if I'm starting to feel just weird, or I don't have the urge to drink, but that's also there's not there's it's this sneaky thing where a nice day will show up, and it's like I'll be driving, and there's a bar or something. I'm like, God, it would be great to get a drink. It's not that I think I'm going to go get a drink, but I think it would be great to go get a drink. Like
Yeah.
I remember. But the thing that keeps me from doing it is remembering how bad the hangovers are, and pretty much how bad everything was when I was the last time. So.
Oh yeah. How about your relationship with music? Something you've always been interested in?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been really a defining characteristic of my life since before I was playing in bands. I mean, it was just always something that I was interested in, even just listening to and hearing. From a young age. I mean, I remember riding around with my Fisher Price, literally tape deck, with Michael Jackson playing on it, on my bicycle, riding around the neighborhood. I mean, all kids do that, but I got really into, like, I mean, all kids, like, have favorite songs here and there and stuff, but I was pretty much a fanatic. I was really into Michael Jackson, and then I think my aunt introduced me to Huey Lewis and the News, and then Back to the Future came out, and Huey Lewis was big, and But at the same time, that was before I was old enough to kind of get into what I was into, what I could get into. I got into rap music, like Run DMC and Beastie Boys, and all that came out sort of around the same time in the mid '80s, early '80s, mid '80s. I was probably 10. And then, yeah, I listened to all that old school rap, like Curtis Blow and all, ton of stuff like that. And that was like just different from my life. I mean, my parents didn't listen to it. That was unique for me. And it sort of defined who I thought I was at the time, And
yeah, back then too, like at least for me, maybe for you too, there was, like gangster rap was blowing up when I was young, like fourth grade, I guess. It was like this risque, like scary thing that our parents didn't want us to listen to.
yeah,
So there was an appeal of it like that as well. And it was like a look into a world that was so foreign and far away because we lived in like a lower middle class white suburb. So it was,
yeah,
I don't know, there was just an appeal that it was like something different. And I loved the music.
it was the same for me. I mean, it was, I think around that time, I must have been in fifth grade, I think. I just remember it being fifth grade, like Two Live Crew and NWA, that stuff had come out. And that was just so different. It was just so, I mean, I could still sing every word from the first NWA album, Straight Outta Compton or whatever. I won't, but I used to seriously, I would play Super Mario Brothers and listen to NWA. And when my parents would come in, or they'd come downstairs, like, cause I did the same thing. We lived in a suburb, outside the city, and, it was mostly white. We did have a lot of Latino influence in the suburb I was in. There were some gangs at the high school and stuff when I was growing up, but they didn't really mess with anybody outside of that, outside of their own, like if they were Latin King and other people were folk at the time, they'd mess with each other, but not with us. We were also the punk kids, so nobody really messed with us because they were kind of afraid of us. They just didn't know. They didn't know what to think. So anyway, I'm sort of jumping ahead, but at some point I started skateboarding, right? Because I was really into breakdancing. Breakdancing was so cool when I was young. I wore, I remember wearing parachute pants to seventh grade and my Run DMC shirt, but it also started mixing with like my Jimmy Z and Vans and Converse and Airwalks and my skateboards and stuff. And that's actually what brought me into punk music, was skating and getting into that. And that was really my sort of, when I realized this is what I'm about. My friend showed me. I mean, I think I've told this story to people, but my friend was like, "Hey, have you heard this band? Check this out." We were skating outside. It was Minor Threat, and no, I'd never heard anything like that, anything. And it was probably 87, 88. They were broken up by then, but the influence wasn't, and it was it was still the era of record stores and stuff, and that was my introduction into punk music.
Yeah, I was curious about that. So when did you start playing in bands?
I was in high school. I was actually early on. I played clarinet and saxophone and bass clarinet in the band, and then in the band. And then when I got to high school, I didn't want to be in band anymore because I didn't want to be in marching band. I didn't want to sweat in marching band outside, and I didn't think it was that cool anymore. And I was starting to get into punk, and I went to high school. I went from eighth grade to high school, and I went from mullet with feathered hair to, a skater cut, they called it, right? With the swoop and the shaved sides, right? And, because when I was in junior high, like it was like Bon Jovi City, Def Leppard, Bon Jovi, all that stuff was huge. And I was starting to get into the punk stuff, and I got to high school and I just met some people there that were playing in bands, and they had like shows at their basements, and I was like, what the hell is this all about? And so I would go to those shows, and that's how I got into it.
So how did you end up joining up with Braid?
Through that same scene that I got introduced to in high school. I mean, I was there was a few guys that I met, and we were walking around the hallways, and someone was like, "I heard you like Minor Threat. You should check out Fugazi. This is Ian's new band." And then he showed me the Nation of Ulysses, who I hated at first, and then liked late. Now I love them later, but and that was the Kinsella brothers. Like I went to high school with the Captain Jazz boys, so
Okay.
we all went to high school together, and they were they were in a band before that called Toe Jam. Oddly enough, well, not oddly enough, but that was the name of it. It was Toe Jam, and they were starting this new band called Captain Jazz, and I was a freshman, and most of them were sophomores, but their brother was still in 8th grade, Mike Kinsella. And then so I would go to their basement shows at their house, and some friends and I started playing in a band, and we'd go open for them in their basement, you know? And so they were in this scene, this Captain Jazz was in this scene that, long story short, you know, over the next 2 to 3 years, we all started going to shows, not just in basements, but Captain Jazz would play out at like a venue in one of the suburbs or in the city, and we'd all go see them. And we'd get introduced to other bands in the scene, in the Chicago suburban scene and Chicago scene. And one of those bands was Friction, which was Bob Nana's old band before he was in Braid. He played drums and sang in. And I remember my friend, I was buying CDs at the show, like I always did. And they had 7 inches in CDs, and someone's like, "You should get that Friction CD. It's pretty good." So I picked it up, and I listened to it a lot. And when I went away to, so long story, that was probably my senior year. And then I went away to college at U of I in Champaign, and there was a band playing called Braid. And Braid they had released one song on a comp that actually was on a comp with Captain Jazz and some other bands. And I bought the comp from Tim at high school one day, and for $5 or something, it was like a 7-inch comp, and Braid was on it. And I had heard the song. I didn't love it, but it was in the genre. It was in the vein of what they were doing, of what we were trying to do. And there was a bunch of other bands on there. I can't remember, but it was called the Ghost Dance Comp. So anyway, I went away to school, and I went to go see this band because Bob Nana from Friction was in it. And I had a 7-inch that they were on. So they were playing this show at like a local underground coffee house at U of I. And it was before I even started school. And I went to see him, and I talked to the drummer at the time. His name was Roy. And we just bonded over music. Like I was into Captain Jazz because I grew up with those guys, and we were talking, and he had met Bob through an advertisement in Maximum Rock and Roll, like trading videos. So we were in that scene. It was all about, to be honest, like if you were in that scene at the time, like you were bound to meet other people in the scene, And so I just went, and I ended up leaving the show as a member of the band that night. They were just like, "Hey, you're going to be our new, you play guitar, and you went to high school with these guys, and you're into all the same bands that we're into." Like at the time, like Fugazi and Jawbreaker and Jawbox and Shudder to Think, a lot of DC influence, and then, we just knew some of the same people as well. And in fact, I didn't realize this at the time, but Pete, the guitarist that I eventually ended up replacing, Pete from Braid, he had put out a tape of a band that I was in high school that I sang one song on. He had a label called Subfuss. So it all kind of, it just had happened that way. We just sort of, I ended up at a show one night. I talked to them. I talked to some guys in another band. I was like, "I'm new from Chicago. I just came down here for school. All I want to do is be in a cool band. Like, that's what I want to do. Like, yeah, I'm here for photography, but I want to play music. Let's do this." Because by then I had decided that's what I want to do, And I don't know if I had made, like, if I would have said that out loud, but I do remember being in college classes and people be like, "Oh, what do you want to do? Now that you're here at college?" I'm like, "I want to be in a band." Like that was what I would say. Everybody else was like, "I want to be a photographer for Rolling Stone," or whatever they wanted to be a photographer for, because I was in these art classes and stuff. But so that's sort of the long story. But yeah, man, if you were in that scene, you just met people, And so I ended up meeting those guys, and I left the show a member of the band. And, I didn't know if that was going to last or not, but I brought my guitar. I went to practice. I was going to join as just the singer. And then they found out I played guitar, and the rest is sort of history. I was still fresh on guitar. I had been playing guitar seriously only for about a year to a year and a half at that point. I had started playing just by ear, learning. And I played probably for 3 hours a night, at home. But I would just mess around. So that's kind of how it happened.
How did it work with you on vocals and Bob on vocals? Like, how did we decide who's going to sing what?
In the beginning, I think it was like I don't really remember. I don't think there was ever like I'm going to sing this one, you're going to sing this one. It was just kind of whoever got to the mic first. And it wasn't like a contest. It was just like one of us would have an idea and we'd be at practice and we would just sing. And actually, most of our early practices, we didn't even have microphones. We would just be yelling,
Yeah.
Right. We'd just be singing or whatever. We'd get in to record a single and no one had ever heard the vocals yet. We just knew the music, So it was interesting. But, Bob is a lot more prolific as a lyricist than I am. He just doesn't stop, right? He just writes, and he doesn't just write lyrics, but he writes lists and tons of stuff. So he just he would kind of have more most of the time. So that's kind of I think that's just why it happened that he would sing more often.
How was that scene at the time? Because, Midwest emo, cap and jazz, braid, it's a very specific sound nowadays. And of course, a lot of these bands are legendary, but how was it at the time? Was it just young friends coming up and you could like feel something growing?
Well, I mean, at the time, like for example, when I would go see Captain Jazz, even at the time when we would see them in their parents' basement, they weren't doing anything I'd heard of. I didn't like, we were listening to punk, but we were also listening to that like early 90s, like 120 minutes, like alternative music, like, Nirvana was on there, Smashing Pumpkins, but we were really big into Jane's Addiction. I know everybody was big into Jane's Addiction at that time. And there was a lot of influences coming from everywhere. And I'll just say that there was something that I think the energy that was at it. I'm sure people will say this about whatever the band is that got them into this music was, but the energy that was at the shows I would go to, it was tangible. You could touch it. There was a thickness. There was an excitement. There was so much there that you couldn't really. You were excited to go, and not just that, but you felt it. You would connect with the people on stage. The bands that really got us going at that time, there was Captain Jazz, this band called Gauge that is really underrated and overlooked from the Chicago area at the time, who later became, Kevin Frank still does a band called Haymarket Riot, and some other bands, but he was in Traluma and some other bands too. But Gauge was really overlooked, and I think probably partly to do with some of their the recordings aren't that great, from that time, because we were going to whoever would record us, and it was pretty cheap, and it was 16 tracks or whatever it was, and it still sounds great, and some stuff still sounds. I mean, that first Minor Threat record I think is 8 tracks, right? So, but I wouldn't say that it's sonically excellent, but it was definitely different. But it did capture, those live shows and that scene. It was its own thing. And the crazy thing about it was it started just morphing into more, right? Like, so our friends would go play somewhere else and we would just go there. You're playing in Sheboygan. Let's go to Sheboygan. We'll all go, or you're playing in Madison. Great. We went to go see, I saw None Left Standing in Madison. And then this old band that I think one of the guys from Promise Ring was in. And then, Davey met up with the Captain Jazz guys later, and he joined while we were all still in high school. And I met Davey, and it just started becoming just more than just our high school and our local Chicago and we just started meeting people from other places that wanted us to come play and we wanted to go see our friends play. I wasn't really a part of going out of town to play until I got to college and I was just barely 18. I had just turned 18 down there when I got down there. And then we started touring, just playing. People, you want to come to Indianapolis? Let's go to Indianapolis, But that's how we met. I met the Promise Ring guys because Davey was in Captain Jazz, and then he started Promise Ring, and that whole thing just started kind of being its own thing. I think, the other thing is it's just like anywhere else, right? I think any scene, you can tell a band's from, Southern California, right? You can tell a band's from, East or whatever, like Oakland or San Francisco. There was this definite sound, at the time. And, I think we cultivated this Midwest sound by playing with each other all the time and trying to, oh, did you hear that new song they did tonight? That was great. Like, we should try something like that. I don't know that it was always us saying we should try something like that out loud, but we were definitely influenced by each other. And, by 2 years pass and all of a sudden, we're on tour and we're playing in Kansas City and we're going out and meeting up with the Get Up Kids and that Midwest scene becomes a little bit larger. You start to incorporate some of that like influence from like Colorado and stuff like and Arizona, like Jimmy Eat World and Christie Front Drive and those bands. And then we met the guys in at the Drive-In and some other bands down in Austin and El Paso, and and then there was a San Diego scene that that used to be the Romulans.
Oh, right.
They weren't called Romulans, but everybody called them the Romulans because they had the Romulan haircut and they wore all black on the hot.
Or Spock core.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that was like the Klickitatty guys, and not them, but there were other bands from there that it was all the same thing, same look, same feel. But each of those scenes had their own sort of style, and we just started sort of picking up. Midwest is a melting pot, I think, of all the styles. I feel like, because you get the East Coast influence, I think Chicago was heavily influenced by Green Day and Southern California punk, and East Coast hardcore, and especially DC, at the time.
Oh yeah.
At least most of the guys I was in with, we just idolized that DC scene, the Discord scene at the time, growing up.
Right. So did Braid just start touring all the time? Because, the initial run of the band, you're 18, you said, when you get to college, and that continued until what? You were about 24?
Yeah, 23. That was the initial until we broke up in 99.
Yeah,
we pretty much didn't. Bob was in school. I was in school for the first year, for 1 year of Braid, and when I joined Braid, and then I just didn't do very well because I wasn't really interested in doing school. I was just interested more in probably partying and but also playing music. That's it.
Right.
And so we would tour anytime Bob had a break from school. So literally spring break, Christmas break, whatever, winter break, and then all summer. And so, the first year we did, I don't know, a week here, a week there, and then, 3 weeks in the summer, 95. And then it just went ballistic from there, and then every weekend that we could play out of town, we did. If Iowa City if we were going to play in Iowa City, we were just going to go and play for a weekend. We played in St. Louis and Indianapolis, Bloomington, a lot of college towns at the time too, Madison. Basement shows were big, and I assume they still are. I don't go to basement shows. Not that I wouldn't. I just wouldn't even know where to look to find one.
Right.
At this point, I saw this. I'm sure you and everybody else I know follow the Hard Times or whatever. But I saw this article. It just reminds me of this article that I saw where it's like, middle-aged man just as confused as to why he's at the basement show as everybody else is confused why he's there. Like it was just it's just so hilarious. But yeah, man, I mean, so we pretty much we toured whenever we could, and I would work odd jobs just to make rent, like and mostly service industry jobs, coffee shop or waiting tables, because you could leave and come back, and usually they would take you back. so that was easy.
Frame and Canvas,
Yeah.
the 1998 classic. Talk about the state of Braid going into this album, like when we're about to record it. Like, how were things going? How were the shows? How were we with each other?
Going into that, we had some. I know one of those songs we'd had for about a year because we had recorded it originally, and Ukulele. I think Ukulele is not on there. Never mind. But Constellation Prize Fighter, we had recorded it about a year and a half earlier in California when we'd flown out there to play some shows for the first time. I think in '96, and it just had never made it onto anything. So we thought we'd do that one, but I don't know why I thought of that song, but at the time we were touring so much, we were super tight. We could play with our eyes closed. We probably did most of the time, but or play while jumping and yelling and freaking out and not miss a note, but we were super tight. We were touring hard, and I think Bob had just finally graduated college in the spring of that year, 1997. And so we had been on basically nonstop touring until we went to DC. We actually toured out to DC to record the record. Like who does that? No, it's like, we're going to record a record. Let's practice and whatever. And we'll work out the lyrics and all that stuff. And, maybe not kill our voices, playing shows on the way. But I don't know. We just had a different way of doing things. We didn't stop, man. We were going to go to Europe, a few days after we recorded the record too. So for our first European trip, and we had been touring nonstop. I think we had probably done, 4 or 5 months on off a week or two between 3 or 4 week runs. But we had been going pretty hard. And so we knew all the songs really, really well. They'd already been worked out. I don't know where we demoed them, but we did demo them somewhere. And I remember, I don't know if Jay wanted the lyrics, but I think he wanted the lyrics in advance before we went out there. And I wasn't used to like writing my lyrics down and sending them to somebody. So we'd spend a little bit of time doing that, but like getting it ready and doing some preparation. But we were mostly just touring. So yeah, we toured out there and then wrote the end of Ariel we used to be this song called Ariel on the record was a shorter song. But there's this whole ending that I was like, we're going to DC in 2 days, and we were in State College, Pennsylvania, and our friend we had a day off. So I was like, hey, can we just write an ending to this song? The song's too short. I think we need to write an ending to it. So we just went into his garage, or the place where we'd played the show. It was at a place called the White Lodge in State College. It was this house show place that this guy, Chris Broach, ran. And he let us practice there, of course, the next day. And we wrote the ending of that song on the way to DC to record it. So it was, it was chaos. I mean, the way that I think about it now is, I think we were barely staying ahead of the wheels on our van, and in a, metaphoric way, in an emotional way, in a physical way. I mean, I think we were hanging on by the strings of our guitars, I guess, if you will. But it was chaos. And I think at the same time, we were so well oiled that we went to DC and recorded and mixed that album in 5 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we were there. I think we did drums for the first day, and then, 12 hours straight, got them all down, and then did, all the rest of the instrumentation by the next day, and it started vocals the next day, and then finished vocals on the third day, and then mixed for 2 days, so
Wow.
or a day and a half. So that's how quick it was, and we recorded a lot of it live together, and probably most there was a few overdubs here and there, but I don't think we went and redid a lot of like work because we were that tight, so.
Wow. What was it like, the just ahead of the van wheels and holding on by the guitar strings, like you said, like, what was it? Was it just like chaos individually, chaos with each other, or band just a runaway freight train that's like barely held together? Like, what was it exactly?
I mean, I think it's probably more the latter, the final one that you said, it was really like I think that we just had this ethic, this about us that was like, we have to go on tour because I didn't like being at home, and I don't
Yeah.
think anybody liked being at home. I think we liked being on tour. It was the most fun thing I could imagine doing ever, at that time. Hell, I wouldn't do tours like that now if you paid me, but uh, I mean, it was a different time, I mean, I was young, and we were really young at the time. I was just 97. I was 21 when we recorded that record. So we were still real young, all of us, and we had a lot of energy, man. I think all of us just had it in our heads for whatever reason that you have to be on tour. You have to go on tour. And I think the way that we built up Braid, at least built up a following, was by touring, by playing in. We pretty much didn't say no to shows, at least for the first probably 3-4 years, 3 years, maybe even ever, in the first incarnation of the band before we actually did a reunion tour and did all that other stuff, and have since then recorded a new album and all that. But I don't think we said no to anything ever. We played a kid's 16th birthday party in a small town outside of Champaign, but that was early on in the band. I don't think we did that again, but
Yeah.
but any opportunity for us to play was an opportunity in our minds, I think, to just get fans, and I knew that if we played somewhere, didn't matter if there were 15 or 40 people there, I knew that they would all come back the next time because I just knew that the energy that we had, that they would get into it, because we just had, I don't know, that I just knew that we had something at the time. And to me, 40 people at a show was a good size show at the time. That's great. 40 people in a basement, that's packed basement, So, by the time we were getting out to DC to record that third record, we were still sometimes playing 15-person shows, in the middle of nowhere where we're like, yeah, we got, we needed a show between here and there. And there's this guy that's going to do a show. We know him. And it was, it would have been, maybe the bands weren't the same kind of bands but then we do great shows where we'd be playing, at the Black Cat in DC, and there'd be, 300 people or 500 people or something, or we play Metro in Chicago and there'd be, a sold out show, with like 1,200 people. Right. So we'd play anywhere from, 25 to 1,000 at that time, probably. And I would think that the shows we were doing that at Metro where there were 1,000 people usually weren't our shows though at that time. We were opening for somebody else. But we were playing a lot of small shows, and we had a lot of energy and a lot of just drive to succeed and do. And I think the only way we knew how to succeed and do was by getting up and getting out, getting out there and playing. I mean,
that's what you have to do.
I think that's really still what you have to do, right? So
it is.
So, but I don't have the energy to go on, and so after we did Framing Canvas, after we recorded that record, we immediately went on tour to Europe, which was idiotic because the record wasn't even out. We did a whole tour with the Get Up Kids for 6 weeks, and that was probably the beginning of us starting to fall apart because we recorded Framing Canvas in a big flurry of just whatever, hurried harried and hurried and reckless sort of with ourselves and with everything else in terms of our health and our mental health even. And then we went on tour and our record didn't even come out till 4 months later. And we were all, by the time it came out, we were pissed that it hadn't been out for 4 months. But we were used to releasing records kind of whenever we wanted, right? We weren't used to like trying to get promo and doing all this stuff. And at the time, polyvinyl was still fairly new, and we were the first real album of that they had done. I think they had maybe done a Rainer Maria record, or maybe they did that after Framing Canvas. But anyway, he was a new label, and he had done some 7-inches for us, and he was offering, and him getting Framing Canvas also got him a better distribution deal. So he had to follow all the rules with like getting the record out and doing a 3-month lead time. Cause at that time you had to get it to record stores and all this stuff. So you had to have this lead time. And I think we were pissed, and we toured for, 3 months hard after recording the records, playing a lot of the new songs. By the time the record came out, we then had to go on tour and support the record. Right. So then we continued, and we did 8 months on the road in 1998. And then I did another 5 weeks with the Firebird that year. So I was on the road more than 9 months that year. And then of course 99 happened, and we were super burnt out, and we went to record a demo for the new record. And that became the last 3 songs we recorded, because we were like, I can't do this. At least I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Were you the first one to say you couldn't do it anymore?
At the time it felt really mutual. Like everybody was done. When we went outside into the parking lot of Coney Island Studios, which was the name of the studio in Madison. It's called Coney Island Studios. She was from New York, woman who owned it. Her name's Wendy Schneider. And she recorded the last 3 songs. And it was like, literally, I think I recorded the final vocal part, and we listened to the final mix, and we were mixing it. And then literally when we had printed that final mix, it's like, let's go outside and talk in the parking lot. Somebody said that. And I knew it was happening, and I'm sure everybody else did. But I don't think I knew at the time that it was like, maybe it was mutual because I was the odd man out, and maybe it wasn't. I think at the time it felt like, this is over. We're all done. This is bullshit. But those 3 guys, got an idea that, I as soon as that was done, I jumped right into the Firebird band, and was like, I went back to Coney Island where we recorded that record and recorded the Firebird band's next album. And I might've even had it halfway done at that point. And those guys had somehow decided to start doing Hey Mercedes. Now, I don't know what the deal is. I don't know if they had planned that or not, but that's sort of the way it shook out. And I think if I look back on it, one of the reasons I was talking about ADHD is ADHD also has ADHD gives me a lot of problems in terms of interpersonal relationships. And, it's easy to be, I'm easily upset, easily angered, and easily frustrated, super frustrated person for no reason. And I can't put my hand. I remember having practice with Braid and just being like, guys, I'm in a bad mood. It's none of you guys' fault. I don't know what's going on. I didn't know what was wrong with me,
Yeah.
for a long time, not until my 30s. But if I look back, it was probably just the way that at least half of it was the way that I was frustrating. And I was frustrated a lot and would take it out on bandmates and stuff. Not overtly yelling or being whatever, but I think I was probably passive aggressive and just kind of bullshitty. And, and then of course, the way that you medicate being upset with your situation and the way that you are, is to drink. And so on top of that, I was drinking quite a bit, and I didn't really consider it a problem at the time. And I think everybody drank as much as I did at the time. And so that wasn't really an issue necessarily, but it was more just, we're done doing, I at the time was like, I think I'm going to go back to school. I'm done with this. I felt like, I remember feeling like I'm tired of playing to 40 people in a basement. And I know I said that was awesome in the 97, but it wasn't awesome in 99. So
Yeah.
After we had put out Framing Canvas and we had been doing, touring so hard, but we just toured hard and we didn't say no to anything, and we didn't know how to take a break. And I don't think that we ever learned that you could take a break for a little while. And then it kind of ended up being that we did take a break, but it was a 5-year break,
Right.
go do some other stuff. And then we got back together in 2004 to do a reunion tour. Right. And then, of course, what did we do? We booked a 3-month tour and a Japan tour. And at the end of that, we couldn't stand each other again because we went hard like we used to because we didn't learn yet. We hadn't learned. So,
yeah, I guess you're still fairly young. So, I didn't really figure out how to do anything correctly until at least my mid-30s.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I still know how to do anything correctly. I know how to do things better than I used to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, though, now that we've gone through all this shit together, these guys and I, it's different now, obviously, all that stuff's kind of water under the bridge. I mean, at least for me. And I know for those guys, it's different. I'm happy to see them when I see them. And I think the feeling's mutual, right? It's a totally different feeling than it was. I remember in 2004, it was really exciting at first. And then by the end of the tour, it was like, fuck, what the fuck are we doing? But it was great. It was a great run. That was fun.
When did you start working on solo stuff? You have a new split out with Palm Ghosts, and you have an excellent track on that called Shoulder Your Own. So everybody make sure you check that out.
Yeah.
But when did you start working on solo music?
Well, I was kind of half-assing it for a while doing solo stuff. I put out some solo stuff in like 2018, but it was just a bunch of like stuff I had laying around, and I'm just like, I'll just put this out and throw it up on, digital or whatever. But I had actually recorded a solo record back in 2006-ish, 2005, right around when Braid went on tour right after that. But I sort of just ditched it. A couple of those songs I put out, but it just wasn't up to par anyway. And then I was busy with the Firebird band, and then I'd done this band called La Sparrow for a while, and then another band called Sunset recently, but spelled SNST. If anybody wants to check it out, that's pretty good stuff. I started doing stuff. It's funny because I was talking to my wife, and I was like, I don't know if I want to like start another band again and like have to like be like, hey, this is the new band from that guy that was in these other bands that you like, you know what I mean? Or just do it as myself, just put my name on it. So I started talking to this guy, Tim Anderl. I'll give him a little credit here.
Tim from Sweet Cheetah.
Yeah, from Sweet Cheetah.
I haven't met Tim in person, but I correspond with him often, and a great person.
Yeah, and that's my impression of him as well. He's a great person, and he actually did the promo for and publicity for the last Sunset record that I put out in 2020 with my wife, who sang on it. Right when I got sick, actually, when I got cancer, we were still mixing the record. And so I finished the mix and then it came out. And then I had Tim do the publicity for it in 2020. And we kind of stayed in touch. And I was talking to him, I don't know when it was, but probably sometime last year. And I was just talking or maybe earlier this year. It's like, I really want to start releasing. I don't know how it came up, but I want to start releasing stuff. And I've been talking to my wife about it, and I think I'm going to do it under my own name, because then people don't have to be like, what's Chris Broach doing these days? Because this is what I'm doing. Here's my name. Not that there's a huge demand, but I feel like I actually feel like the songs I'm doing now are really good. I really like them, and I'm happy to put my name on them. The stuff that I released before that I was just sort of slapping out there, I wasn't that stoked on, and I really wanted to actually start putting stuff out that that I was proud of and that I liked, so that I didn't just have that as a legacy of my solo stuff. Because it was just sort of beats and some other stuff that was just sort of there's actually a couple of good songs that I like. One that I wrote for my wife for our wedding that I put out.
Yeah, when I was listening to them, I actually made sure, because you know how there'll be like multiple artists on the under the same name. I actually double checked to make sure it was you, because the very first track sounded different. And I was like, wait, is this the same Chris Broach? And then I was like, oh, yes, it is. You can hear the progression when you go through and listen to everything.
You can if you listen to that old stuff, if you listen to it and check it out. But the stuff that I'm doing now, it's basically stuff I would write for whatever new band I'd want to do now, And I decided that I really wanted to start doing a lot more. I've been messing around with like electronic stuff for quite a while with the Firebird Band and Sunset and even some in L'Aspero, but I really wanted to get back to like writing from the guitar and from a groove and from the bass and really band rock, music. And I'm stoked on it. So I talked to Tim. So long story short, I talked to Tim and, I was telling him this stuff and I'm like, but I don't want to do an album and then just try to shop it and find a label. And I have a label myself. I don't want to put it out myself because then like, it's not the same if I'm calling someone but it's also my record, like, hey, can you review this record? It's my new record. Like it's better to be totally honest, it's better if you have a label that's asking someone or a publicist or somebody else that's saying, hey, this is a record I put out by a person I back. Right. I mean, that's why people like Donald Trump would call and pretend to be his own publicist, right? I hate that person, by the way, but it's
just the way it works. So if it's like someone else doing it who's not you, it just somehow validates it more.
It does. It 100% does. So I was talking to Tim about that very dilemma. I'm like, listen, man, I could put it out myself, but I have a double interest in that. And I'd rather just give it like, are there people out there that would want to do it? Like, what if I just started doing singles? Like, are there anyone, like I could just give it to some labels and see if anybody wants to just do a single. And he's like, yeah, let's do that. So he helped me talk to a bunch of these labels that have put some stuff out. New Granada did one. Pop Tech Records did another one. Sweet Cheetah did this last one, along with Steadfast. So the three songs that I've done in this singles series, the most recent is Shoulder Your Own, which is a split with Palm Ghosts, which is a great band. I really like Palm Ghosts a lot. I remember when I was thinking about doing this, I told Tim I want to maybe do some splits or something. And he said, well, what about, Palm Ghosts? Because he remembered I liked that band. They'd put out a record that I liked, and Tim had a hand in doing that. And I said, yeah, absolutely. I was hoping he'd ask. So their song on the record's great also.
Oh, yeah.
And then I did another split with Tim's brother's band, Joe.
That's the 1984 draft?
Yeah. And that song is a great song. What's my song called? I don't even remember. Blood Thicker Than Honey. Is that what it is? Yeah. Blood Thicker Than Honey. Oddly enough, my ADHD is showing here. It's called Blood Thicker Than Honey. And that's a rad song. It's, the first two songs I have that I put out were that one. And then I'm going to have to look it up, to be honest. The first one I put out was on New Granada. And that one is, I'm going to tell you in a second, because I want people to listen to these things. They're really good songs, man. And the problem is that, if they were put out, if we put these songs out, as one of my other bands or whatever, people would be listening to it. They just don't know that this stuff is out right now. The other one's called Rock Has a Shelf Life. And some of this stuff is it's a lot more personal stuff. The Blood Thicker Than Honey is about sort of my cancer diagnosis and what I've gone through with that. Kind of what the doctor was telling me. And it was hard for me to listen to after I wrote it, if that helps. And then, Rock Has a Shelf Life was something that an old publicist had written me saying, yeah, man, when Braid originally broke up, I started doing the Firebird Band. And I think I was getting in touch with her just to ask her to get involved. And she's like, yeah, rock has a shelf life. So if you just step away too long, it's not going to be there for you when you get back. It's sort of tongue in cheek, fuck you sort of to that comment, because it's a
Wow.
fucking, it's a ripper, man. That's the song that I did it's a really good one. So yeah, what I'm trying to do, man, is just put out some good stuff. I've got, a few more songs in the pipeline right now. I'm going to do a cover that I'm going to release, pretty soon. And, Tim's kind of at the helm for that right now. And eventually what my plan is for next year, get stuff together and start writing for an album and just get a full album out. And I don't know where that'll go yet, but someone will want to put it out, I'm sure. And that's part of the goal too, is that, I'm trying, these labels can put some good stuff out, and hopefully I can get a little bit more, coverage that way.
Well, we're going to help with that. And everyone, make sure you check out Chris's split with Palm Ghosts. He's got a track on there again called Shoulder Your Own, which I really enjoy. It's good stuff. And Palm Ghosts, great band too. Like a nice post-punk sound. I dig it.
Yeah, they're good. They have they've got that that like 80s vibe too.
Yeah.
Like Breakfast Club style,
Right,
which
right.
is awesome.
The 2011 Braid reunion, which eventually gave us the excellent 2014 LP No Coast. How did that come about?
Bob and I were hanging out. So Bob and I hadn't chatted for a bit, but I moved back into the city. I'd been living out in the burbs for a while with my dad. And just kind of, I had been running a record label for a bit, and that sort of fell apart in 2007, 2008, when basically before streaming happened, but when people were just getting music for free and no longer buying records, the labels sort of stopped paying for itself. It wasn't profitable ever, but it was now losing money. So that was Lucid Records, and I put out a few good bands. But anyway, that stuff we still have it, and I have the back catalog and stuff, and I may still do stuff with the label at some point, but not right now. Anyway, that's a side point. But anyway, I was living out in the burbs, and I moved back to the city, and I had finished my college degree. I went back and got a degree, and I finished that. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to move back. And my dad let me move in with him so I could finish my degree, because I was sick of being broke. And I needed a degree to make a regular living, hopefully. That was my goal. I got the degree and did not still make a regular living. But long story short, I also was in a relationship. The Firebird band had been going hard, and then that kind of fell apart. I got into this relationship with a girl that wasn't that great, and it lasted a few years. And and then I moved back to the city, because I'm like, I got to get back into the city and do something with my life, And it was around 2010. Bob and I started, so I got in touch with Bob. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I saw that he was doing a DJ night where it was like an emo night, basically, where he would just spin emo, and it was called "Shield Your Eyes" from that Jawbreaker song, "Shield Your Eyes." And so we would spin. So I would go, and then he started inviting me in, and it became our DJ night. So we would just play basically all the bands that we grew up listening to, all the bands we talked about earlier, Cat and Jazz, and even Minor Threat, and Fugazi, and anything from DC, and all the stuff we grew up listening to, at least what we used to call emo in 1995, right? Before it was even a known thing, right? So we sort of did that for about a year at this bar called Bar DeVille in the city, and just hung out. We just spun every Wednesday night. We did a DJ night, and we started hanging out and playing. We decided we'd try to start a band, and we were playing with this guy, John Raba, who used to play in Boys Life, bass player. And another friend of ours named John was playing drums for a short time. And we got together, and it was cool, but Bob and I were like writing, and we're like, maybe we should just do Braid. Like, you want to just write some new Braid stuff? And that was it. That's how it happened. So we
just like that.
We got in touch with with Todd and Damon, and Damon's, I think, living in Nashville and Todd's in Milwaukee, and Bob and I were in Chicago. So, we would write some stuff, and then I don't know how we got together, but somehow we'd get together. And I think Bob and I had a practice space in the city that they'd meet us at once in a while. So that's how we did the 2011 EP, Closer to Closed. And I think we didn't know what we would do. Are we going to do anything else? Let's just write a record. So we did. And we started doing some shows and then touring. And I think we felt like, okay, well, let's write an album then, So that's how that happened.
It sounds like we learned not to burn ourselves out this time because you guys are still playing.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we take the time we need, and, we've all sort of agreed that our lives outside of the band come first. So if something comes up and someone's like, hey, we've been offered a lot of great things, like a lot of great shows and stuff that we just turn down at this point because we just can't do it. We have other, I got young kids, Todd has kids, and, it's not really about kids only, but we've all got other things happening. And if someone asks us to do a show, then it's a question to everybody, not a demand. Does that make sense? It's not, oh yeah, we got this great show with whoever, and it's going to be in Australia for 3 weeks, and we got to leave in 3 months. You guys good with that? Like, or not? Are you guys good with that? Like, see you at the airport, right? It's do you guys want to do this? We have an offer, and we have an agent that takes care of that, which is good. So, and Damon handles all that stuff, and then gets us all on the horn if we want to do something, and we do it.
Nice.
Last thing we did was go to Japan, which was in March, and it was sort of a follow up to the Frame and Canvas 25th anniversary tour that we did last year. And then we finished that off in Japan this March. And then we haven't done anything since then because we've got this big show in Vegas coming up. So
is that Best Friends Forever Fest?
Yeah. That's going to be. I'm really excited. It's going to be a great show. I mean, it's like pretty much all the bands we used to play with, which is awesome, right? And who are old friends that I haven't seen in some of them 20 years, And then there's a few bands that we've never gotten the chance to play with that we should have played with back in the day. And that's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, it's Best Friends Forever in Vegas. And that's, I think, the second weekend of October.
October 11th through 13th. Wow, I'm looking at the lineup here. Bright Eyes, Sunny Day, Cabin Jazz, The Jesus Lizard, The Dismemberment Plan, Braid, of course, Karate. Everybody's on this. What a show.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun show. And Jawbox is on it. It's going to be fun. Yeah, I'm really excited. So that's it, and something like that comes up, like, yeah, we'll do that, but
yeah, you have to, something like this.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you?
Well, we've got this show coming up. It sounds like we've got more Chris Broach solo music coming up, which is exciting. What else? Anything else coming up that we want to announce here?
Well, I'm trying to get these songs finished. So yeah, that stuff, if you follow me on, whatever streaming service you want to follow, or look on Bandcamp, you can get all this stuff. I am working on, at some point, putting together a tour for my stuff. And I may play, we'll see, but I may play some other stuff as well from some of my other projects on the tour, just for fun, maybe some other stuff. I did an Instagram post to see what songs people would want to play, and it was a fairly popular post. So I don't know if I've hidden it now because I didn't want people to keep asking for songs that I don't want to play. Or that I can't, right? Because some of them are, it's like, can you play this song from Braid? I'm like, that's not a song I sing. That's Bob's song, Although it might be fun, might be funny. But yeah, I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to get a tour going together, and I might do. I've got this drummer that I play with, but I play everything else on the record, the recordings that I do. I record it here, and I don't have a live band yet, so that's part of it. And I'm not, it depends. The kind of touring that I want to do is not the same kind of touring that we talked about earlier, right? I'm not going to go on 6, 8, 12-week tours playing basements. Probably going to do, short runs here and there. maybe this fall, but definitely by next spring.
Awesome. Well, Chris, I've been listening to you a long time. We all have. And I really appreciate everything you do. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show.
Keith, thanks so much. I'm glad I got a chance to, and thanks for listening to me.
And there you have it. Chris Broach. Excellent, excellent conversation. Very happy to have Chris on the show. It was really interesting hearing about the thriving Midwest emo scene in its infancy. That was really interesting. Early shows with Cap and Jazz. Man, I bet those were incredible. And the whole trajectory of Braid. Just the amount of touring they did and hearing some behind the scenes of Frame and Canvas. I can't believe they toured out to DC to record that album and then just went on tour again in Europe or Japan or wherever it was before the record even came out, right? Those sound like 23-year-old decisions. I guess you don't think when you're younger, oh, let's wait for the record to come out and then we'll tour the record. You know, you just go, 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 and it has to be all or nothing. But I didn't know Chris was sober, too. So surprise, sober conversations are always great. I'm glad that Chris is doing well. So make sure you check out his split with Palm Ghosts. It's really excellent stuff. And thank you so much, Chris, for coming on the show. And we have our Artist Spotlight interview now with my friend, Scott Signorino, who I hadn't spoken to in a long time. I think the last time I saw him was 10 years ago. He was in a band that played a show here in Brooklyn, and I went to that. But we have reconnected, and he is in a new, excellent band called Soft No. They just released a self-titled EP, so please make sure you stick around for the interview, and make sure you check out this EP because it's really, really good. So here is Scott Signorino of Soft No. All right, we are here now with Scott Signorino. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Keith.
Scott, it's great to have you here. You know, I've known you a long time, and it's been a long time since I've talked to you, but you are here now, and I'm happy about that. And you've got an excellent new EP out from your band, Soft No. It is a self-titled EP. But Scott, tell me about this band. When did it get started? How did it get started?
Well, first, Keith, thanks for having me here. It's a real pleasure to reconnect with you again, and it has been a very long time. This band started sort of in a unique way, mostly over file sharing via like Apple Logic. Our guitar player, Austin, who also sings together with Allie, plays with me in another band. And one night over the winter, we were sharing just, voice memos and demos of things that we were working on that didn't really fit with the other band that we do. And I sent him, I guess, the first specs of what would become Keeping Tabs. And he said, hey, I really like this. Can I put some guitar on it? And I said, sure. I'd never really thought of it becoming a band. And then so when he started putting guitar on it, it became a much more realized idea. I mean, you're a musician, you know how it goes. You have like a sketch of something and then you don't really hear what it's like until 2 months after you're done working on it. Allie, who sings and plays bass, is in a band called Flat Waves here in Philadelphia. And I've known her for a really long time. I really like her other band. I always thought she was a great singer, and I always thought it would be cool to play with her. John, our drummer, I've used to play in a metal band with called Cosmonaut a long time ago. And he actually grew up across the street from me. He's probably the one I know the longest in the band. And
wasn't Mark Deal in that band too?
Yes, he was. Yeah. He played guitar in the second iteration of it, and he sung in the first iteration of it. Both were cool. Solid dude. Hope he's doing well. I haven't seen him in a minute. And then Kate, who plays keyboards, I've actually known the second longest in the band, and we weren't really considering a synth when we had started this band or started throwing ideas around. And then Kate expressed interest in playing, and I figured, the more the merrier. So we brought her on board. And I think the first time we heard the synth, we now just can't even picture the music without it. It's like one of those things where you might not hear it outright, but it's such a layer now in the recording that if it wasn't there, it just wouldn't be the same thing. So it's kind of atypical because I think we actually had 1 or 2 full band practices before we went in the studio, and Kate kind of wrote her parts on the fly in the control room with Mark Water, who produced and recorded the record.
Wow.
Yeah, so kind of a different way of doing stuff. We recorded throughout the winter of 2023 into early 2024 and wrapped everything up in February. So
yeah, I love it. It's right. It's a lot of stuff I like. Moody, kind of shoegaze, post-hardcore, post-punk sounding stuff. Think Slow Crush, think Psalm, think Brutus. I love that kind of stuff. What are some of your influences coming into this band and writing for this band?
It's kind of again, you being a musician, you sit down and you're like, I'm gonna write this song that's gonna sound like this, and then it never winds up sounding like that. And then I'm gonna start a band that's gonna sound like this, and then it's always the inverse. Initially, I was like really feeling doing something like the non screamy Deftones stuff, and picturing like what a female voice would sound like over that, or like having a woman sing over it. And maybe it sounds like that like 8% of the time. But other than that, as I kept going down the rabbit hole for the songs that I contributed, I did 3, Austin did 2. I kind of realized that just by default, a lot of my stuff winds up sounding like 90s ish. Like Smashing Pumpkins are a big place I always go back to, at least with guitar. And then even going into like the early 2000s stuff, like Pretty Girls Make Graves, or even going to like the post-hardcore stuff, like some Glassjaw, or like You Come Before You era Poison the Well. There's like little flecks of that in there. And I think that was kind of where I sourced a lot of my riffs from. And then everybody else, I mean, I could say that like Allie is like a big Mazzy Star fan. It kind of comes from that place. But then the more we kept playing, the more we were like, oh, wait, you almost have like a Fiona Apple or like a whole thing going on. And that kind of just became an unconscious influence for everybody else. And I've now by proxy been listening to both of those bands a lot more.
Nice. That is a excellent list of bands right there as influences. And you're playing guitar in this band. Now, how long have you been playing guitar?
So as you know, bass is my first instrument. I've been doing that for about 28 years. And then when I got sober back in 2018, that the saying, like, idle hands, I kind of needed something to fill my time. So I picked up the guitar. My buddy Ted left one at my house, and I thought, this is going to be really easy. I'm just going to be able to transfer my skill set from bass to guitar. I tried to play Liberation Frequency by Refused, and I almost threw it across the room after like 2 minutes. But I kept hammering away at it. And then, it was kind of, I guess, serendipitous that the world shut down as I was leaning into the guitar, because I had nothing but time and nothing but, being stuck inside. So I just kept wailing away at like Interpol riffs and then Quicksand stuff. And then like figuring out that there's a Taking Back Sunday riff that's exactly the same as Antique by Texas Is the Reason. And it's like, so just by doing that and like just picking up little riffs and learning them here and there, I kind of found my way to where I am now on the guitar. But yeah, definitely different animal than bass, and at its own level of frustration, I guess.
Yeah, no, so some of those same bands taught me to play guitar, particularly Texas Is the Reason. I started on bass too, and I wasn't going to play guitar. But then I remember in one of my classes when I was a senior in high school, this guy I was like, I'm not going to play guitar. It's too hard. And this guy showed me, he's like, no, it's not. Look. And he showed me how to read basic tablature, just like E, A, D, G, B, E. And I was like, that's it? And he was like, yeah. And then I was like, oh, okay. So I like started doing it. But when I first played guitar in a band, which was Crash of 64 a long time ago, it was very exciting for me, because I wanted to do everything that I could except drums, because I'm just a god awful drummer. So when I played guitar for the first time in a band, it was like a big deal for me and very exciting. Is it that way for you?
Yeah. And I think it's because, and you probably know this as a bass player first, you know, you have ideas for songs and they're harder to articulate on the bass guitar unless you're writing a very bass forward song, at least in the context of rock and roll, right? Then when you have a guitar in front of you and you have like chordal patterns and progressions and all that stuff, it's a lot easier to kind of realize, I found anyway, for me, it's a lot easier to realize the larger vision of a song with a guitar than with a bass. That being said, I still prefer playing bass over guitar just because it's a different kind of challenging. I think maybe the barrier to entry for bass is a little bit lower, but I think both instruments, once you reach a certain point, are very difficult for their own reasons. But yeah, guitar was exciting. I remember walking off the stage after the first Soft No show and basically saying like, well, I did it. I'm actually a real musician now. I played the hard instrument.
When was that?
We played our first show shortly after wrapping up the mastering of our record. It was at Kung Fu Necktie, which I know you and I have shared a stage at.
Oh yeah.
It was in February of this year. It was with the guy who produced our record, Mark Water, his band Super Curse, and my buddies Modern Culture from Lansdale. They got kind of like a brand new kind of thing going on. Definitely cool band to watch out for, but it was fun. A lot of our friends came out, and for a Thursday night, it was like, you know, I feel like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday are the sweet spot nights, and it went really well. It was a good time.
That's awesome. Yeah, my new band just played our first show last month, and I play guitar and yell. And after that show, I was like, I did it. Now I've done all the things. So if I die or if the band breaks up, I can say I did it. So I know that feeling.
Yeah, no, I commiserate with that. You definitely feel like, well, here I am. This is now officially my music. And I would say, to go back to the guitar question, when you start putting your own songs together, it's a lot more of a vulnerable place, I think, because with bass, a lot of times you're just accompanying somebody else's idea, and that's great too. But when you're kind of laying everything out there from a songwriting perspective, you're kind of showing everyone your mental impression, for lack of a better term. And that can be really disquieting. That can be a situation where you're like, okay, well, people could think this sucks, and that's going to be a huge shot at my ego, but I can't let people know that I'm a bad sport about it. So it's the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. So that was the kind of the rub with that.
Yeah. Well, listen, you don't have to worry about that with this EP.
Thanks, man.
I'm telling you, and I'm telling everybody, you want to check it out.
Thanks, man.
Oh, so you got sober in 2018. I think I first saw you post about that, and that's when I heard about it. I shouldn't say I love hearing that other people got sober, right? Because I am too. And I didn't know that you were having some kind of struggles too. So what prompted you to put it all away and get sober?
So congratulations to you too. I love hearing that people, not necessarily get sober, but if people, it's a hard thing to do, man. Cause I feel like we don't, especially people our age, it's hard to exist in like any kind of a social strata that isn't catering to alcohol. So if you're able to kind of put that down and walk away from it, or drugs or whatever your poison is, it's a big accomplishment. So, I mean, I just love it for the personal growth in folks. I didn't necessarily have like a huge problem per se. I just had a very unhealthy relationship with alcohol at the end there, and to a lesser extent, like drugs too. But essentially, I began to find that whenever I drank or used or anything, you didn't know which personality type you were going to get from me. And it started to create a lot of havoc in my personal life. And it just got to the point where the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, literally and figuratively. And I just didn't like pissing everybody in my life off, like on a bi-weekly basis, and then having to deal with the fallout from that, and just the crippling anxiety that came with hangovers. Like, oh God, what did I say? And I just felt like if I kept getting wrecked all the time and using that to tamper down my anxiety or whatever, I never would actually lean into any root causes. And I would say that had I not sobered up, I probably would have never done this musical project. And I think like having lost both my parents very recently, like taking that would have been taken in a, like, I would have taken that a lot worse had I still been drinking. So it was just,
Yeah.
I just needed to kind of, it was like a self-evolution thing, I think, for me.
I'm sorry, you lost both of your parents recently?
Yeah, I lost my mom at the beginning of the pandemic to lung cancer. And then incidentally, right after Christmas, as we were recording the record for the Soft No stuff, my dad just passed away unexpectedly from an aneurysm. He was 85 and he went in his sleep, more or less. So I think like that's probably the best you can ask for if you got to go.
Right.
But at the same time, it was a really weird period where I kind of felt like my life was in a weird free fall, because I feel like when your parents are there, I was telling my wife this, like, you know, when your parents are still around, feels like, well, at least my parents are here. Because, you know, when you're younger, you're like, my parents will make everything okay. And then when you don't have your parents anymore, you're like, well, I guess I got to bet on myself and I got to go at all this shit by myself now. So that was kind of, but thank you. It's kind of it's been a very harrowing 5 years, I could say.
Yeah. You've gone through pretty much everything.
Yeah, I guess so. But, you know, rough seas make a better captain, or whatever the aphorism is.
Yo, so you're married too. How long?
We got married in September of 2020 in my living room in front of like 8 people. And then we had an open house afterward, because this is like peak pandemic. But they had just started to kind of lift the restrictions on, you know, what people could do, or, you know, your own comfort level. So we just basically said like, hi, we're getting married today. It was over Zoom for people that didn't want to attend in person. My wife's family was up for Massachusetts. And then we kind of just opened our house out. It had a very bougie DeBruno Brothers cheese plate. And then the best part was everybody was out by like 8:30. And I got to sit and play PlayStation at 9:00 p.m. at my own wedding. And, you know, I'm sure, as you know, when you finish drinking, or when you're put down the bottle, man, like wedding is an excruciating thing to have to sit through.
Yeah. Yeah. So. It's not, most social interactions for me are excruciating. I feel unless there's some kind of specific activity like a show, because alcohol and drugs were so ingrained in the very fiber of my being.
Yeah.
That I don't know. I can only hang out for like a couple hours.
Yeah, same. And my wife, we've been together since, I guess, 2011. We, you know, did Are We Aren't We for the first 6 or 7 months. But Colby is her name. I tell her the same thing. And, you know, she's probably a little bit more introverted than I am. But even still, I thought I was like a social guy. But really, it was just because I was, you know, cooked all the time.
Yeah.
And then when I stopped getting that way, I was like, I flame out after like hour 2. And I think in situations where I would be like, oh, yeah, I'll totally crash over. And now I'm like, forget it. I'll drive up to New York, have dinner, and come back the same night. And so it's very much reframed how I carry myself in the social arena, I guess.
That is reassuring to hear, because I do the same stuff. Like, I won't stay anywhere. I'll drive like 6 hours to be somewhere and then drive 6 hours back. Or I don't know. I always get a separate hotel. It's a whole lot of stuff, because, you know, just, I don't know. When I got clean, I thought I was Mr. Outgoing party guy too, but that's not me. And I realized I was doing all that stuff to make me want to feel that way, but it's just not who I actually am.
Yeah, no, I think you and I are probably very similar that way. I felt like, you know, the drunk confidence, as it were. It was just a lot easier to kind of exist in situations I wouldn't otherwise. And then I just kind of had to fully embrace it. Like, no, I'm an awkward dork. And things that I thought I liked actually were probably making me miserable. And so, and not like I'm a hermit or anything like that. I have plenty of people I see regularly, but it's just the context is very different.
Yeah, I just do it in much shorter bursts now.
Exactly. And no one needs that much Scott Signorino anyway, so.
No more out till 4, and then, hey, let's come back to my house, and then, you know, we're up till noon the next day. No, that just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, no, that sounds excruciating now.
And I'm good on that. But listen, so we want to remind everybody, Soft No, the self-titled EP is out there. Any shows coming up? Any other news we can share with the people?
Absolutely. Our record release is September 14th at Ortlieb's with a bunch of buddies. And then I'm working on a little, there's 2 shows happening kind of in Pennsylvania, in, Lancaster and the Lehigh Valley in October. And then I'm sketching out a Northeast run in November. It looks like we're hitting Brooklyn, Boston, Salem, Connecticut, and someplace back in PA that Sunday. And that's booking shows is a lot harder than it used to be, man. I don't know what your experience has been, but
it's almost impossible.
It's a lot of work in the phones, and it's fine. I don't mind doing it. But yeah, so that's what's going on currently. We nothing else that, there's nothing. We have very infrequently jam and get together because everybody's in other projects, and obviously time's a premium once you hit 40. But yeah, we're trying to push this release out as far as we can and get as much as we can from it. Our record label, Abandon Everything, has been really great with getting the word out and getting the pre-orders filled. So taking advantage of the buzz at the moment.
Awesome. What about your other bands? You're in a few other bands. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah. So I do another band called Sold with my buddy Ted. That's probably, and Austin, who plays guitar in Soft No, plays keyboards in that band. And that's probably more of like an Interpol post-punk kind of that space, television, that sort of thing. We have a couple gigs coming up in the fall. Then I play with my buddies Steve and Kenny in a project called Yacht Crashers. That's a lot like the Bronx or something, just like rowdy kind of hardcore inflected rock and roll. And that's a blast. We kind of do that as much as we can because 2 of the guys in the band are parents. And so that becomes like kind of just like hey, there's a show. Do you want to play? And we do that. And then I still do the Desperate Living project with some of the guys from the Minor Times, my buddies, Tim and Brian. And we don't do that as frequently as we used to. We had a drummer shakeup, and my buddy John had to put music down for a minute. And then this guy, Jay, is kind of getting up to speed with the set. But we have a show coming up this Saturday in Doylestown. So we still get together and riff every once in a while.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're pretty busy with music, which is where you want to be.
Yeah, I think I have like other hobbies, but I feel like I love playing music. And I this is kind of a selfish way to put it. I've amassed so much gear over the years that I'm kind of like, well, I better use it. And so I try to take a new bass out every show, or something like that. But yeah, it's also, I don't know if you've encountered this as a musician yourself, but I feel like you get so used to band practice and the show thing being the thing you do that music just kind of becomes like where your friends are. And I feel like band practice has now taken the place of like a poker night or something like that, where it's like, oh, well, we can still hang out, but instead of going to the bar or whatever, we play guitar for 2 hours in a room.
Yeah, if I hang out, it is attached to something. Like it's like a recovery thing,
yeah,
or a podcast thing, or a band thing. And I'm okay with that because I don't know, I just always want to be doing something. Not to say I never hang out. I'll hang out. I'll do like regular hangouts too,
sure,
which is cool. But a lot of it is tied into other stuff, and a lot more time into music now, which is what I've always wanted. Because I don't know, there was a lot of years where I wasn't as active in bands, but now I am, and now it's taking up more time, which is really where I want to be. So not so much time for other hobbies too. Like I was doing a whole lot of gaming, and I don't know, I was like doing a little bit of live streaming on Twitch for a minute, and I haven't really done any of that lately.
Sure.
What other things do you do?
So I really am into like hiking. And we try to get out and do it as much as we can. And not to sound like, a typical person, but like I really got into traveling for a minute there. Like last year we went to Peru, and then the year before that we went to Cuba, and then we'd gone to Spain. Like we try to go out and see it, travel as much as possible. And then lately, because of my parents passing away, their house kind of fell into our lap a little bit, because it was just kind of there. My dad lived there up until he died. And So now it's kind of deciding what to do with that. I'm in Doylestown a lot more than I ever have been before. So kind of turning that into like a rental property and doing stuff there. But yeah, and, you know, we're also big like restaurant people, but we don't get out as much as we can. We've endeavored to cook a lot more. So cooking's a big hobby for me. And also like you, I'm a pretty avid gamer. So yeah, there's a plethora of stuff I get into still.
Awesome. Well, Scott, it's great to catch up with you. And listen, we got to play together at some point. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, we definitely should. I'm definitely digging this memory entry stuff. I'm really excited to see what you guys do with it. And congratulations on playing with this day forward. That's a huge deal. Probably my favorite of the Bucks County bands from my seminal years. So